In the midst of a lavish ballroom filled with glittering gowns and sparkling crystal glasses, a frail girl in a torn dress was stopped by security. One of them coldly said, "This place isn't for beggars." Laughter echoed around her, but she clutched her worn-out violin tightly, her gaze trembling yet resolute, ready to play a melody that could change everything. Under the chandelier, crystal shards rained down like stars, each prism refracting into 1,000 tiny spears of light. The scent of hot truffles blended with burnt butter and aged wine. Glassware clinked together, a sharp, delicate sound like breaking ice. Amid this lush velvet luxury, a harsh command snapped across the room. "Stop right there!" A red velvet rope stretched across the entrance to the grand banquet hall. The guard in black vest planted an arm firmly an iron barrier. Behind him, the chamber orchestra adjusted their tempo, cellos hummed darkly. Violins skated like smoke. Gowns rustled, bow ties were straightened to perfection. And at the edge of the light, a frail girl with hastily tied hair held her scuffed violin. Her dress was a confession rough-worn fabric, a mismatched patch at the hem like a bruise. Cold air from the hallway drifted in, making the pine resin dust on the violin's neck tremble like dew. She swallowed, fingers gripping the faded soft case strap. "This isn't a place for beggars," the guard said slowly, each syllable weighted and deliberate. A laugh curdled from the nearby table, and murmurs of amusement bloomed. She hugged her old violin tighter. Her gaze trembled but held steady, ready to play a melody that could change everything. "Are you lost, dear?" asked a man voice, airy and mocking. "The kitchen is that way. Or maybe you're looking for some charity event?" A woman leaned into her friend, her lips painted a sardonic red. Elena said nothing. She straightened her posture, refusing to look at the mismatched patch at her hip. Calluses thick like small wooden plates pressed against the violin's neck, touching it to feel her breath steady. Her heartbeat clicked steady, tick-tock, tick-tock, an invisible metronome inside her chest. "You need to leave," the guard's tone softened with a hint of regret. "Private event." I have a letter," she said, voice thin as a horsehair on a bow. "I sent it ahead." "That doesn't matter." A female voice cut in sharp as the rim of the crystal glass she held. She stepped forward, wrapped in a burgundy satin gown that hugged a figure past her prime. Her jeweled hairpin glittered like a dagger. "We don't accept street performances tonight." Her smile, the kind that curtsies just enough to bar the door, was practiced automatic. The nearby guests snickered. In the front row sat a man who did not laugh. He sat rigidly, steely gray eyes and disciplined features, sharp cheekbones, thin lips. A watch on his wrist was muted, a silent reminder of time. Adrian Cole, known to the entire city, his thoughts a mystery. Now he tilted his head, tapping his finger softly on the chair in sync with Elena's heartbeat, tick-tock. "I'm not begging for money," Elena said, gaze fixed somewhere between the velvet rope and the gleaming floor. "I just need 5 minutes." "And what's the trade?" a gentleman with a ring asked, a sneer in his voice, as if he'd just discovered a new form of entertainment. A jingle, laughter rippled through the hall. A waiter wheeled out a dessert cart. The smell of tiramisu and coffee swept by Elena, twisting her stomach tight. A water-filled glass on a corner table dripped condensation onto the carpet in round beads. The chandelier shivered lightly from the AC, each crystal refracting light into minuscule daggers aimed her way. "You're carrying something on your shoulder," a guest remarked, gesturing at the violin. "A backpack full of history. Or someone's broken heart," the next guest teased, "that are like a pinprick." Elena looked at the guard's polished black shoes, one scuff line fragile as a crack in ice. She could walk away. She knew that sensation, turning her back on a wall, a swallow-the-throat kind of feeling. But tonight her throat felt timbered. It would crack again if she gave in. If she stepped back one more time. "You don't want us to call the police," the woman in burgundy said, voice velvety but edged. "Do not make your evening harder." Elena inhaled. A bergamot perfume scent pricked her nose, recalling a dried orange she used to hang by the door every Christmas when she was 10. Her heart skipped tick-tock-tock-tick. "Let her speak." Adrian interrupted, not loud, but enough to make bow ties sit straighter. People turned to him like grass to the sun. He looked at them. Not at them. His eyes were on the crescent-shaped scratch on her violin's body. Mr. Cole. The woman began her practiced smile, ready to handle cameras. "This is a charity gala. We have a schedule. Charity starts by not demeaning anyone," he said, stopping his finger taps. The waiter straightened. The guard blinked. The woman bit her lower lip. It slipped unconscious, a crack in her plan. Elena wasn't sure why he sided with her, or what she intended to do. But a crack had appeared in the wall. Cold air wafted through. "You may speak." For 10 seconds, the woman said, turning back to Elena, her courtesy dripping saccharine. "Then you leave." 10 seconds. A lifetime can shrink into less. Elena nodded, tongue thick as parchment. "My father taught that music isn't for sale," she said, her voice low but firm. "But it's not meant to stay silent either. I've heard that somewhere before," someone mumbled. "TikTok, maybe?" A smirk. An eye roll. A coin dropped into a silver tray, clink perfectly timed. The guard slid the velvet rope aside enough for a single passage. Elena stepped in. The plush carpet swallowed her footsteps, leaving only tiny indentations like punctuation. The orchestra paused, waiting for the MC's cue. Cell phone cameras raised, clicking in staccato like fireflies. Some faces arched brows, awaiting a cheap trick. Others hid behind wine glasses, savoring the accidental scandal about to unfold. She set her case on the nearest chair. The metal latch sagged, press 1, and it popped open like a referee's whistle. She lifted the lid. The scent of old wood resin and mustiness rose like memory. The lining was worn thin. She could see the bare padding. The bow lay atop the body, horsehair strands clinging like frost. On the bridge, the E string had been tied with a haphazard knot, a poverty knot. Those in the know would understand what it meant. A fingernail tapped the chair beside her tok-tok. "Almost." The woman's voice floated in, as gentle as perfume, but venomous. "Your 10 seconds are nearly up." Elena nestled her chin beneath the scroll. The wood pressed cold to her skin. Her left shoulder throbbed familiarly. She lifted the bow with a slight tremble, but the bow tip still carved a straight line. The air thickened like gel. A man cleared his throat, reminding himself he was watching. "Hang on." A bartender's voice called out from the doorway, the auction's about to start. A few shifted, glancing at their watches. Elena drew the bow ready for the first note, but a strand of horsehair snagged on a stray thread at her sleeve's edge. It held fast, a tiny hand clasping. "You have no right to be here," a guest whispered loud enough for 3 to hear. "This is our world." Elena pushed the hair out of the way. It was so fragile it could break from a breath. She recalled her father's words. "Music isn't for sale, but it's not meant to be silenced." Tonight, that was no longer advice. It was a gentle hammer against her sternum, an internal beat. She placed the bow mid-span. The bow tip descended. Silence fell across the room, thin like ice. All eyes poised, smirking mouths ready to mock. All about to step onto the edge of something unnamed. "Time's up." The woman's voice glittered as she turned to the MC, a signal cut. At that moment, a click snapped from the violin case, dry and final like a judge's gavel. The lid clanged down. The aged wood reflected the chandelier's light into 1,000 tiny blades. The broken horsehair snapped free, drifting upward, and caught on the red velvet rope. A sudden cut, a pale strand of bow hair dangling from the rope, swaying like a clock hand about to strike the next second. The avenue stretched out before her like a luminous ribbon. Manhattan shimmered tonight, slick with the remnants of an early rain, the pavement mirroring 2 cities, one above, one beneath. The 5-star hotel stood upright like a beacon of light. Cars lined the entrance in sleek procession. Their doors opened and closed in choreographed rhythm. The scent of truffle and browned butter blended with red wine, intermingling with the fragrance of white lilies in towering arrangements. The doorman tapped his glove delicately, greeting each guest with a formal bow. Black tuxedos shone, gowns swept over the red carpet with a soft rustle. Above, crystal chandeliers stretched like constellations, each prism shattering light into 1,000-pointed shards. Inside the grand hall, a buffet table ran like a harbor. Oyster trays yawned open, revealing pearl-toned flesh. Lobster claws glowed ember red, tied with vine-green ribbons. Silverware lay aligned like promises of precise perfection. A sommelier tilted a Bordeaux bottle, lowering its neck, as wine poured out with soft pitter-patter like night rain. In a corner, the string ensemble retuned their instruments. The whisper of bow hair on strings sounded like a hand gently drawing a velvet curtain. Beside a marble staircase stood a poster, Winter Fundraising Gala Marissa Cultural Foundation. A tagline below read, "Investing in the Future of Art." Sponsor names glowed in raised gold letters, led by Adrian Cole's name cold and embossed like a seal. In a hidden hallway out back, the wind-strapped door screeched. The metallic scent of the service elevator bled into the air. The gleaming trays that appeared miraculously in the feast hall came from here, a place of frantic breaths, rattling sweat, and hurried footsteps. Kitchen staff in oil-streaked white jackets darted through the crowd as the restaurant manager barked orders. "Table 13 is dairy-free beef on the right. Smile, but don't overdo it." "Yes, yes," chefs snapped back like bullets. Elena stood in a cramped dressing space behind it all, a metal locker with rusted hinges groaning shut. Coats hung pressed tight, jostling like fish in a packed net. She retied her hair and glanced at a cracked mirror fractured like a scar. Her white shirt had been flattened last night with a boiling pot, its cuff crease stubborn and stiff. The violin case on the chair was pale and worn, its clasp-chipped logo bleached like a memory soaked in rain. She cracked it open halfway, revealing a dark, glossy instrument, its wear at the chin rest polished smooth from years of contact. Her phone vibrated urgently. "Maple Pharmaceuticals, this month's medical bill." She ignored it. Another message, "Sis Elena Mom's fever reducer runs out in 3 days." She bit her lip. Earlier she'd scrubbed the bathroom tile long enough to forget a smell, but the faint antiseptic scent that clung to the home blankets stayed in her nose. She silenced the phone, slipped it into her back pocket, and closed the case with a dry click. "Be in the side foyer in 10 minutes, the manager called. "Push the wine cart through Section A. Don't stare at guests. And smile." "Yes," she replied. "And don't bring that bag in," he added, glancing at the case, clearly irritated. "It's distracting. I'll keep it in the locker," she said. But her hand stayed on the case's strap. The zipper felt cold, a subtle secret. The thumb spot was worn smooth, a long, soft groove from years of pressure. The door opened to the foyer. Everything gleamed so brightly that her eyes blinked involuntarily. The guest's attire whispered the dry rustle of silk, the weight of velvet, the sparkle of sequins when someone turned. White draped chairs stood solemn guard. Black bows cinched their backs. On the stage, the MC practiced his opening line, repeating his breaths as if searching for rhythm. In the sheen of a polished service cart, she caught a distorted reflection. Hollow eyes from exhaustion. A gaunt jaw. A strand of hair escaped from her clip. She touched the violin's neck through its fabric, a habitual prayer. Her fingertip traced the tiny dent worn into the wood, a mark of countless placements. In her mind, a melody lay folded neatly like a tablecloth waiting to be unfurled. Yet her hand stilled. Another message came through, "Landlady, if you're late paying rent again, water gets shut off." No emojis. Her cramped queen's garret lay atop an aging brick building. Winter winds howled through window cracks like a broken organ. The ceiling bore a yellowed oval stain that expanded with each rainfall. The kitchen door hung by a cracked wooden latch that moaned open on every pull. Still, a windowsill offered morning sun and a resilient mint plant surviving despite neglect. Taped to the wall among bills was a faded photo, 7-year-old Elena, standing on a stool, her bow longer than her arm. Her father's broad hand sheltered her shoulder, and mother hair, tied low, smiled with eyes thin as a new moon. A drooping willow arched behind them. The photo's edges were frayed, but the gaze inside stayed bright. When her father passed, the music at home fell silent. Her mother huddled in an old cardigan, coughing like urgency pounding her ribs. Elena sat amidst medical forms. She couldn't interpret numbers climbing endlessly. The music conservatory letter, elegantly scripted in pale blue, was replaced by work shifts. Practice schedules vanished into punch card time clocks. The metronome became a time clock. She packed her violin, tied the mi string knot when it snapped under tension. "It's fine," she told herself. "It can be mended." Marissa's name inspired reverence, leavened with fear. The tycoon queen of balance sheets, her face adorned every business magazine, standing serene among million-dollar art. When Elena was 18, her school's scholarship linked with one of Marissa's initiatives. Photos were taken blazoned with branding Marissa's Fund for Young Talent. But that summer, the boardroom convened. Elena sat outside with her case, sweat beading on seams. Inside voices traveled soft and velvet hard as steel. "What's the ROI on this program?" "Better to shift budget to PR. Music scholarships don't yield media pull like youth entrepreneur awards do." Marissa ended the meeting with a nail-on-the-coffin remark: "Art is a luxury. We invest in what builds the next century, not nostalgia." The next morning, an email arrived. "We regret to inform you. The scholarship is suspended due to strategic realignment. No signature, no apology." Elena printed it, slipped it into her file, then into the case. She couldn't throw it away. That would be tossing a breath. Tonight, Marissa was the hostess of the gala. She glided through the room like a pen stroke. The PR hovered, feeding, "Do we use hatch art for tomorrow, or hatched art means business?" "Both," she'd said without looking up. "But don't overplay charity." "Investment sounds better." "Yes, ma'am," the PR whispered. She paused before the string ensemble. "Don't play anything sad. I don't want someone crying during the auction." Mozart perhaps offered the lead. Maybe she replied, "But make it brighter." Adrian Cole arrived 2 minutes late enough to signal he answered to no one, but not enough to be rude. His charcoal overcoat draped over his shoulders, a slim watch peeked from his cuff. In the private elevator, he never glanced in the mirror. A CFO text lit up his phone. "The German partner wants higher upfront payment. Want to agree?" He typed back, "No. Keep current terms. Don't budge." His thoughts operated like finely calibrated stone blocks, everything in minimal shift. To him, any room was an Excel sheet where people stood, how light hit closest exits. But tonight, at the edge of the hall, a delicate scrape, a bow hair brushing a string, paused him. Beneath his wine glass, he smelled pine resin. No KPI could account for that. Elena, the manager, instructed, "Take wines to table 7. Now. Don't meet their eyes. Just smile." She wheeled the cart, rubber wheels whispering across carpet. Bottles clinked softly. She tilted the tray toward a couple. The woman's gaze drifted from the knot tying the mi string in her case, peeking out the edge to her blouse. She caught herself and tugged at fabric. The smile she offered was polite, the kind reserved for someone who will vanish by the next frame. Backstage, more messages buzzed. Clinic mom's follow-up is Friday. Landlady still no water. She hunched as if bracing for a punch to her scapula. Each day she chose which priority demanded money, which demanded attention. She texted the landlady, "Yes, I'll transfer rent in the morning after my extra shift tonight." The gray text bubble replaced the blue, "Okay." 9 a.m. No more words. On stage, the MC lifted the room. "Tonight, we don't merely dine. We invest in the voice of the future." Applause echoed. Elena turned her gaze to the shimmering Marissa Cultural Foundation sign. She imagined her name once in a success story report before it vanished like a line item in cost-cutting. Elena whispered a fellow server minty breath near her ear. "Need help with oysters in aisle D?" "Yes," she replied, and hoisted the tray. Its weight stretched her wrist. Veins rose. Around her, men spoke of Stock's snowstorms in Aspen. A woman flashed her new diamond necklace, tiny storms when light struck. The elderly waiter beside Elena dropped 3 forks. They clanged low against the carpet. He winced, fearing they'd shatter his composure. Then she spotted Adrian in the front row, nodding slightly during a discussion of turning data into art. He made no smile, but his finger tapped the chair's arm, tick, 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 steady as metronome. Elena didn't know why the rhythm felt familiar. possibly because her Garrett's clock, her father's old watch, still ran in its drawer unobserved. There was a breath of wind through the service door, then it quickly shut. Marissa entered the hall, a spotlight pulled toward her. She spoke of the city's future and its journey with art. Her voice felt warm but hollow, and not a word anchored in Elena's memory. Instead, she recalled studying in the library the smell of old book paper, a teacher's gentle rap on wood. Slow down. Let it breathe. And the morning she got that scholarship email, everything inside her sinking like a deep-sea stone. Elena had written to them saying she'd do whatever was needed to earn a seat next to music. She wrote of her mother her hands that couldn't still. The reply that morning was an automated "thank you for your message. This mailbox is not monitored." She gazed up at the chandelier, thousands of crystals like mailboxes without recipients. And amidst the midday bright opulence, she realized she had two things: an old violin and music no one could erase from her mind. If she couldn't hear it under a roof, she'd let it play at the edge of a world that had no place for her. "Why bring that thing?" her coworker whispered, seeing her clutch the case. "To remember how to breathe." Elena half joked, half truthful. "Watch out." Her friend glanced toward the manager. "He hates personal items peeking out." Elena zipped the case tighter. She didn't intend to perform tonight. Or perhaps she did, since reading the poster earlier in the week. The answer pulsed, growing across applause through each toast that warmed nobody. Like a low note buried in the earth waiting to emerge. At the head table, the MC announced Adrian. Guests leaned in, whispering figures and flashing their brilliance in his eyes. He lifted and set down his glass. He disliked intoxication. It muddled calculation. Yet tonight something unsettled him. Across the room, behind a forest of attendees, he glimpsed the pale edge of a violin case, the sort his mother used to carry to the park on weekends. Somewhere inside, years of frozen ground cracked soft, distant ice. Marissa moved closer and smiled at him smoothly. "It's our honor," she said. "Next year, we will launch a community arts program, perhaps in your mother's name." He tilted his head, a practiced politeness born of many offers. "Let's review the data," he replied. It sounded like promise. It was delay. In the wings, Elena washed her hands in icy water, so sharp it felt like shattered crystal. She pressed palms to her cheeks. Tingles spread to bone. In the mirror, she saw her too thin blouse and frayed collar. She turned away, dried hands on a dark paper towel. A curl still escaped her hair. She tugged it down, but it sprang back. Inside her mind, a melody stepped forward. Barefoot, cautious. "Don't tremble. Slow. Let it sing." And her father's voice. "You don't need to outshine them. Just out-sing." The door swung open. Manager's head popped in, brakes over. "Help with the auction. Again, don't look at guests too long. Smile." "Yes," she replied. She hugged the violin to her side. Her hand brushed the me knot, a scar of scarcity. Still, everyone else in the hall had scars. Only they hid theirs under stone glass or gold. She gave herself a thin smile, one meant only for her. Then she pushed through the door. The hall burst back into brilliance. Ritual resumed. Glasses tinkled. Forks clattered. Compliments fluttered like paper birds. Along the edge of the crowd, she walked quietly, pausing behind a room divider in a hidden sliver of space. She inhaled. Through a crack, she saw Marissa resting her hand on a young violinist's shoulder, someone visibly invited even if her smile didn't reach her eyes. Elena recalled the email, the hallway, the lesson that art is a luxury. That luxury was on display like jewelry. What she held wasn't wanted. Elena, her friend, peered in. "Are you okay?" "Yeah?" The word fell hard, brittle. On stage, the MC clapped. And now the main auction lights levitated. A digital board lit up with starting bids. Paddles rose like birds. Each number danced with a hush. Money floated like a river behind a pane of glass. On the other side lay her mother's medicine-rent fresh strings, a yard of red velvet. On this side, her rough fingers, old melody, her violin. She set the case down and unlatched it. The wood sighed. A surge of resin scent rose, calling across rooms of time. She slipped her hand under the neck and lifted the instrument. The world beyond the screen door faded. Sound pushed back as if a circle of light centered around her. Inside that light stood those three figures under the willow. She stepped out from behind the divider. At the front row, Adrian looked up just as he caught sight of the simple hem of her blouse and the faint shimmer from her old silver case. He stood. He did not know why. Maybe it was the resin scent. Maybe how she held her violin like she held someone. Maybe that tiny fracture inside him cracked again, quiet. Marissa turned. She recognized immediately the type out of place, not by name, but by presence. "Security," she hissed into her earpiece. "A lost girl in the service area." Elena paused at the red velvet rope's edge. Her breath softened. Every bit of her fell still like sediment in water. She touched the bow she had yet to draw it across the strings, but she knew she would. Not begging for a place, not asking for acceptance, simply planting a note in the air like setting a pebble in water to create ripples. Somewhere behind her, the MC carried on. Security approached. But between them, the chandelier's light reflected off her violin into a silver arc, a cinematic slice of light, like a crack in glass before it traveled up toward the ceiling. A single crystal shard quivered, waiting to fall to the next beat. The impact sounded like a drop of metal hitting hot oil. The guard's boot heel crushed the edge of the carpet. "You there?" His voice low and curt. "This area isn't for staff." Elena froze for a beat, her hand clutching the violin's neck, her thumb pressing into the wood, a worn patch that spoke of a ring long removed. A beam of chandelier light cut across the instrument, flashing like a blade. The air carried the scents of browned butter-red wine and the cold metallic tang of polished silver. "Allow me." The hotel manager stepped forward, smile fixed and rehearsed. "My apologies, madam." "Wait!" A man at a nearby table tilted his head, silencing the manager with a languid flick of his hand. "She's holding a violin inside the party. Let's hear it. For fun." He raised his champagne glass. Bubbles skated up the sides, passing over a lipstick stain. Heads turned. Long, slender necks glinted with jewelry. A laugh popped like uncorking a bottle. "Yeah, sure. For fun. It is an art gala tonight. Let's hear this. Vintage violin." Someone elongated vintage, their eyes skimming Elena's frayed uniform and patched skirt. The guard took a half step forward. "Down, now." But Elena didn't move, not from stubbornness, but because her feet felt root deep in the carpet's velvet pile. She could feel her heartbeat through the wooden neck, that spot where the bow would touch the strings. She registered the hum of air conditioning. An MC's voice flickered through the distance in vest. "In the future." A woman snorted, leaning to her friend. "If you want entertainment, go ahead. Let's see what that broken-down violin is worth." Her beaded purse strap rattled like a hailstorm of malice. Elena glanced down at her worn case edge and flaked latch. Her throat tightened. She hadn't been in a room full of stairs like flashbulbs in a storm for a long time. At home, she played through a peeling wall softly so her mother wouldn't cough. Here, everything was bigger, brighter, sharper. The manager bowed awkwardly. "Ma'am, allow us?" "Shh." The silver-haired man raised a finger midair. He wasn't looking at the manager. He was looking at Elena like one inspects a curiosity brought from a flea market and placed on a glass counter. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena." Her voice was thin but held steady. "Good." He delivered it like a headline. "Elena, give us a piece." "If it's good." He shrugged, eyes flashing with a challenge. "I'll be generous." Generous. The word hung heavier than the champagne glass he held. Generous. With what, a number on an auction board? Or with a woman stranded in the middle of a gala? At the head table, Marissa tilted forward, hand planted on the table's edge, like a dam holding back a wave. Her smile was measured. "A charming suggestion," she said evenly, neither approving nor denying. "Music warms a room." The sentence drifted like a paper boat through the room. Guests caught it avidly. "Yes, warms the room. Give her a stage. Right here is fine." Elena gripped the violin's neck harder. The wood rasped under her nail. A stray thread from her uniform hooked onto the case's edge like a dying vine. Her eyes flickered to the kitchen behind her. Steam-heavy pans hurried orders of faster. Her mother's phone screen dark. She remembered the message, meds, only 3 days left. Through to the back, the manager tried again, gently pushing, "We can." "No." The silver-haired man cut him off, his tone shifting. "Here, we didn't pay to see another backstage venue. One piece. Now." A buzz rose in the hall, smooth as velvet. Repeated, "One piece, one piece, one piece." Words turned to rhythm, a metronome. The guard stepped aside a fraction. A chair scraped from a nearby table. A trail of spilled wine still glistened on the floor, and a napkin lay half stuck to a shoe. Elena didn't sit. The chair groaned under pressure. She stayed standing, the violin resting on her collarbone, shoulder aligned, as if shaped by years of habit. Her right hand lifted the bow. A white hair flicked out of it, curved like an eyelash. "Do you know how to play?" The voice was sharp, crystalline. "Don't waste our time." She didn't respond. She tuned the instrument by ear, A, E, D, G. The vibration pulsed through the wood into her sternum, then her belly like a bee's wings beating softly in her chest. "No accompanist," someone sneered. "Happy birthday will do." The room chuckled. At the front, Adrian Cole set down his glass almost imperceptibly. He said nothing. He only leaned forward, his gaze pinned on her. Marissa lifted her glass fingertips, tracing the rim almost mindlessly. "That music," she exhaled, "is charming, but it doesn't feed anyone." She set the glass down, not looking at Elena. "I've met dozens of kids like you. Interesting when you're new. Easy to forget later." A statement dropped in the gap between them. Elena stored it immediately in the same unlocked drawer where Scholarship Suspended rested. "You heard me?" The silver-haired man tilted his head. No hesitation. He tapped the table. Tick, tick, tick. 3 slow beats. "Begin." Elena placed the bow on the strings. A puff of rosin ash moted in the chandelier's beam. She inhaled, chest arching open. The scents around her lemon zest, rose perfume, new leather chairs, cold silver. Inside there was something warmer and quiet, aged wood and resin. Left hand found the first position on the A string, soft touch. Bow descended. The first note wavered thin. She had no chance to gauge the hall's acoustics. No one had offered. The bow was straight, but her right hand quivered once. The note landed amid clinking cutlery and laughter. Someone raised an eyebrow. Someone else checked their phone. "Grow it," the guard murmured without lifting his gaze. Elena drew again, stronger. The tone filled, rounded. But this wasn't a concert hall. The glass ceiling sucked back resonance, returning it colder. She adjusted grip, eased pressure, quickened strokes. Sound began to form a ribbon. "Oh." A breath rose, not surprise, but didn't expect that. The silver-haired man squinted. "Good," he murmured. "Good." Then he pulled a $1 bill from his wallet, folded once, twice. He looked at Elena for a long second, then let it go. The bill fluttered silently to the carpet, stopping at her toe like a dirty leaf. The room felt different. A sharper laughter began. "Look a tip. Fees for performance. Enough to buy rosin." Someone muttered. A woman laughed so hard she dabbed her eyes with the napkin. Elena didn't pause. But the bow tilted just a shift. The note scratched. She saw the dollar bill wine-stained corner darkened. On it, Washington's face bent down like a stranger inspecting her shoes. "Pick it up." The silver-haired man's tone remained coated in amusement. "Money falls unlucky." Her left hand wavered. The bow paused. Rosin dust drifted like snow. "Pick it up," he repeated. "Then play." No one rescues a person from a command wrapped in laughter. It softens the blow, but not the weight. She heard the manager quietly, "Elena, don't make a scene," he seemed to say. She bent down. The violin shifted on her delicate collarbone, the weight firm as an old cat refusing to move. She plucked up the bill with 2 fingers. It felt damp and soft, stuck to her skin. A drop of red wine stained her palm, its grape scent thrilling her nose. She placed the bill on the case's lid. It landed there, small and loud like a whispered insult. "Good," said the man. "Continue." Elena straightened. With quiet resolve, she resumed. She lowered her eyelids to shield part of the glare. Under the lids, she saw other images: her father's lake where he taught her Wynn's voice, her mother's hot soup pot, the maple bill. the auto-reply email box. They lined up metronome beating. She played a soft opening phrase, then a longer one climbing upward, delicate as a ladder. Conversation ceased in a few pockets. In the front row, Adrian didn't lean back anymore. He propped his chin with his thumb eyes unblinking. "What do you want to hear?" Someone droned. Not a commercial tune. Skip the drama. A laugh. Marissa swiveled, surveying Elena with a glint like one inspects lighting. "Dear child," she said softly, loud enough for others to catch if you want to be remembered, "avoid sadness. The rich hate sorrow. It photographs poorly." Ms. Marissa, a PR, stammered, "That's a bit sharp." "Sharp indeed." She shrugged. "Only a sharp blade cuts a cake." Elena glided through the next phrase with a shining E-string silver under the light. The scent of warm rosin rose. Her right hand still trembled, but the music stayed firm. Yet applause, camera flashes, whispers all fractured her line. She fought to stitch a connection. Each change of bow direction was accompanied by a bite into her inner lip. "Enough." The silver-haired man spoke again, tone brisk, as someone exhausted from taste-testing all options. "Next piece. Ave Maria, a woman offered voice thick like honey. Feels wedding-worthy." She pressed her hand to her chest, making her diamond bracelet jingle. "Elena," the manager gently intruded. "When you're done, step away. You're disturbing guests." "Let her continue," Marissa said, surprising in tone. "One more minute. We get authenticity. People expect real." She turned fully toward Elena, eyes cold now. "Tell me, are you realistic music? Doesn't feed anyone." "You know this?" She paused. "Kids like you, plenty of them. Lovely at first, then fading. Not memorable." 2 razor slices, barely felt then, forever in memory. Elena looked back. No words could fill that space. That space held a summer, a moment of decision, an email, a dream folded quarter size. She played again. No elegance. It was sharp, a shard of glass, tiny and round, glinting before dimming. At a peripheral table, a wine server cradling a tray froze, tipping to peer around a shoulder. The silver-haired man wrinkled his nose. "Sounds like morning music." He set down the paddle, drummed his fingers on the table. "Loosen up." She inhaled lungs filled with cold, crisp air. She shifted frames, left hand danced to a higher register, a third, then a sixth. Her fingers, ancient and calloused, still remembered the walk. The bow flitted like a bird. The room shifted, quieting. Someone faced down their phone, placing it face down. As she released the last note, 3 white hairs separated, brushing the light. "Ah." Adrian tapped the table quietly. Not applause. A contained acknowledgement. Marissa watched Adrian watch Elena. She made a fast calculation and smiled. "That's enough." Her voice crisp and final. "Thank you for the demonstration." Her gold bracelet chimed softly. "Now escort the dessert trays in." Elena hadn't realigned her grip yet when trays slid into view behind her. The scent of caramelized sugar brushed her nose. The manager placed his palm lightly on her elbow, a reminder, a pull. "Come on!" Tsk. The silver-haired man disengaged a blade of a laugh. He retrieved another $1 bill, not folded this time. He rolled it into a tight cylinder and flicked it toward her. "Hear the pair." He smirked. The rolled bill landed just at her toe. "Tomorrow buy some coffee. It'll steady your hand." Laughter erupted again, sharp as shattered glass. Elena clenched silently. Her cheeks heated. Blood blossomed. A drop formed. Her tongue tasted salt. She leaned down and gathered the rolled bill and the flat 1-2 damp gremlins. She smoothed each onto the case's surface, flattening them like dry leaves. Her fingers trembled not with fear, but with rage, wordless anger. In the background, 100,000 for Blue City, 150, 200, 250. The auctioneer commanded expertly, paddles rising and falling like graceful fish. Currency danced, never touching the floor. Elena watched numbers leap, felt them as stones settling on her chest. 200, 300, 4, 550. A laugh, thin, bitter. Because she still held the scent of wine on her skin, and her hands held only $2 valorous. "Go wash your hands," her friend urged, gently pushing. "The wine smells strong." Elena looked at her palms, wine, resin, silver, shame. They stained her skin like ink. She rubbed her hands until the rosin dust caught in every wrinkle, etching a map of old roads. She scrubbed until they burned. "You." A voice cut in from behind the divider. "The guard. The hostess wants you." Elena met her friend's eyes. The girl swallowed. "Be careful." She stepped out. There stood Marissa alone, no entourage, no cameras, like a painting detached from its frame. She studied Elena, appraising cloth before cutting. "Elena," she whispered, thin warmth feigned. "I've heard your name." Elena nodded. "You know," Marissa tilted her glass and took a small sip. "I've signed off on dozens of talent grants. Kids just like you, bright-eyed, fragile, believing that a violin and a dream open every door." She smiled sweetly. "Then they learn. Art is a luxury. When their fridge is empty, they choose paychecks." She glanced at Elena's uniform. "Right." Elena gripped the strap of her case. "Yes." She spoke softly, no rebuttal. Marissa placed her glass on a passing tray. "Don't get me wrong, I'm helping you. Reality hurts less." Her tone lowered just enough to touch bone. "Art doesn't feed anyone. I've seen kids like you, they're sadly forgettable." Those two lines, silky and lethally precise. Forgotten tomorrow, but the cut stays. Elena stood longer than necessary. The guard snorted softly behind her. The manager hovered, nearly slipping words. "Elena." She twisted around. Her violin brushed off the tip of Marissa's sleeve. Marissa winced, half a blink. Elena turned away, lips sealed. No apology, because there was no word small enough, large enough to fit that moment. She walked through the side hall. The gavel still hammered on stage 1,000,000. The room gasped. She passed into the corridor where the air sliced like frost. The scent of disinfectant and hotel trash met her. She leaned against steel wall, exhaled. Her shadow elongated across stacks of trays. Her phone buzzed. Landlady rent due 9 a.m. Clinic appointment confirmed Friday. Unknown. That was beautiful. She stared at the last no number. She didn't respond, not because she didn't want to believe, but because it was as fragile as sugar dropped in boiling water, dissolved, unsigned, without warmth. "You." The manager caught up his tone, tight, frayed. "What do you think you're doing, showing off, interrupting the evening?" "She told me." He said, "They said." Elena tried to speak, but only sounds emerged, clink, clink. "No one asked you to stand there," he spat, hand extended. "Give me the violin. You go serve Moose." Elena recoiled. "No." His face fell, then stiffened. "You think that violin is your ticket?" "It isn't." He leaned in. Breath reeked faintly of old coffee. "Here your hands, not a name, remember that." Elena sidestepped. "I remember." Her tone drifted empty. He pursed his lips. "Don't make me say it again." Then he turned, shoes screeching on rubber floor. Elena pressed her forehead to the cool metal wall. The cold seeped into bone, sharp as grief. She cracked open her case just an inch, checked the bridge. It was straight. The E string remained knotted. Rosin dust still coated the scroll. She closed it with a definitive click. Her fingers felt blue, not from cold, from the damp bills she now carried. She slipped the 2 bills, damp-stained, into her shirt pocket. They lay flat on her heart, fragile and creased. Inside, they did what they were meant to prod. One corner of paper brushed her skin, occasionally reminding her. She returned to the banquet hall. Light overwhelmed her like opening a furnace door. On stage, MC counted down a new lot. Applause erupted and tumbled like marbles. She hugged the case tight and moved along the wall. Adrian sat poised, silent, disconnected. His screen was dark, reflecting the chandelier. His gaze lifted just as Elena appeared at the foyer edge. Their eyes connected, faint, too brief to speak, but enough to lodge a grain of sand into the workings of something long mechanical, long frozen. "Next lot," the MC called, then blasted in his mic an exclusive original work from Marissa's new gallery. AI imagery flickered on a massive screen, smiling young artists under sunlight brushstrokes, alive, clean hands. Elena passed before the glass. Her shadow streaked across those joyous faces like rain turning a sunlit photograph somber. Nobody saw. Except her. The first note did not cut the room like a blade. It touched down like a raindrop at dawn falling into glassy still water. Thin, intimate, ancient enough to startle. A speck of rosin dust spiraled in the chandelier's glow and vanished. Elena stood straight, the violin lifted at her left shoulder, her chin tilted. She wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. No thickening of sound. No force. Her bow hovered like a fingertip brushing the nape of a memory. The melody emerged 5 notes, circling back, dipping low, then rising like a small hand reaching upward to catch a falling leaf. Its rhythm was irregular, reminiscent of an old storyteller's breath. The second phrase grew from the silence between beats. The promise beneath the willow. In the front row, Adrian Cole blinked a movement so slight it felt like a mote of dust settling on his eyelid. The wine in his glass trembled with silent convection. He didn't sip or swallow. His hand simply paused mid-air. "She's at it again," someone muttered, voice laced with weariness. "Shh." Someone else hushed them, not out of respect, but amazement. A shift in the room's temperature had occurred. Elena didn't glance around. Her gaze stayed anchored on a dark patch on her violin's body, a small scratch shaped like a leaf. The bow inched forward. 2 white hairs flared from its tip. The scent of resin mingled with lilies on the table, slicing through the buttered air. A-A-C-E. The notes tapped across glass tabletops and pinned themselves like old brooches on memory. No one saw Adrian release the tension crushing the edge of his chair. No one noticed his breath lengthen by half a beat. But the guest beside him glimpsed the nearly imperceptible tremor of his knuckled hand. "Mr. Cole," the guest whispered. "Sir, quiet. It wasn't cold, it wasn't harsh, it was absolute." Music flowed over velvet drapes, down polished legs, through chair seats, reaching the silence between unfinished conversations. It curled into every gleaming surface, wine glasses, silver spoons, mother-of-pearl buttons. A server paused mid-step, tilting their tray. A droplet of water sparkled on the floor. Under the willow, boughs that bend, tender leaves, sunlight streaming golden etching ribbons on skin. This melody wasn't showy. It chose to retreat. It knew its shadow. Adrian tilted forward as if suppressing a sigh. For a jammed moment, the grand ballroom vanished. Glass walls, chandeliers, gilded logos. The gavel's rap, they all receded into darkness. The music pulled him away from Manhattan, transporting him to a wooden porch out in the suburbs where a long frozen summer lived in memory. He heard wind, smell of Marseille soap drying in the sun, a bucket drawn up from an old well. A woman sat in a wicker chair, her dress rumpled hair hastily tied. Her hand hovered over piano key's middle finger, chafed into a callous groove. He couldn't see her face. Sunlight washed everything into white, but he felt the arc of those thin shoulders, how she tilted her head when a tail of a note struck her chest. "Play again, Adrian." Her voice was soft and bright, like water flowing into a just-poured glass. "Just once more. This is the part I promised I'd remember. I remember." His childhood self, scruffy-haired, clutching a pillow, watching a bow like it was a dragonfly, murmured. The same 5 notes. The same turn-descent rise. A half-beat pause like holding breath to hear leaf meet leaf on still water. Back in the present, Elena shaped her bow gently. Her right wrist made a perfect couture arc. A white strand of hair fell suspended for a moment in the cool air before drifting to her shoulder. No one heard it land, but Adrian did, or at least he thought he did. Within him, the old kitchen trembled. The shriek of an ambulance siren. The sharp bite of antiseptic, the kind that burns your teeth. A hospital gown opened down the back. Same shoulders. More fragile now, sharper. The woman lay on a bed, eyes oversized in a gaunt face. Once more, she whispered, "The last time. Promise me." "I promise." At 17, he pulled a metal chair close, cradled an old radio like a pillow. "When I have a company, I will." "Not that kind of promise." She smiled, eyes warm and wet. "Promise me you won't let the world make you forget yourself. Promise. Beneath the willow." She murmured the words so quietly they seemed like a dream beneath the willow. Then the melody dissolved into the machine's beeping. The fluorescent lights flickered, then steadied. Her hand fell limp. Back in the ballroom, a heel slipped thread squeaking against velvet. Elena played a second interval, a leap, daring like a leaf breaking free from water's surface. The melody was stark, stripped bare, but her left hand was relentless, trembling just enough fingers angled to keep the E string from rasping. Back straight, shoulders down, wrist open, but not collapsing, bow angled to whisper, "Don't show off, just tell." Somewhere someone murmured, "What is that piece?" "No idea. Feels familiar. Like a film score." "No, it's different." Adrian set down his glass with quiet precision. His palm left a ring of condensation on polished wood. He looked at it as though recognizing a familiar footprint. He didn't blink, afraid to break this. His body, usually a machine of profit and precision, was suddenly a taut tambourine awaiting a light strike. Each note a touch. Sleepless nights. Meetings bathed in cold light. Climbing numbers. Press events with poker faces. If clauses and force majeure clauses drafted brick by brick into walls. He'd buried that shard of vulnerability, deep-sealed, tape-bound, shoved beneath suitcases full of money in his mind. Now someone gently removed the tape like pulling hair off a coat lapel. "This can't be," he whispered, half to himself, half to a phantom. Marissa leaned, never taking her eyes off the auction stage. "Adrian," she asked softly, "are you okay?" He stayed silent. The gavel tapped from afar. Pock. Pock. 2.5 million. The MC's voice stretched like ribbon. "Wow," S emerged, but a group of people stopped tuning in and started turning toward Elena. Their eyes, initially skeptical or cruel or amused, were now stillaning. Elena shifted into a pianissimo, a lower register, her telling lowered to a whisper. The promise traced lines down the violin, dissolving into spaces between breaths. Each rest hung like a question. "Do you remember?" Every trailing note shaped a new leaf in the air. The entire room was now shaded by an invisible canopy. "What's her background?" one whispered. "Not conservatory," another guessed. "Raised with a violin." "Enough of this," a voice snapped. "Cheap emotional fodder." Elena shifted again, short phrase, then long. Lips pressed, chin firm. Smoke glowed at her eye's edge, but she tamped it out by pressing on her third finger joint. Her back throbbed from leaning over counters, carrying trays, standing too long, but the melody stood upright. Adrian looked at those shoulders, that spine, those hands, and no longer saw a server. He saw a woman from that old kitchen, made everything stay standing with music. Not bricks, but something soft and durable, unseen, yet holding it all in place. "What is this piece?" He blurted, words rising from his chest like stones skipping water. The music didn't falter. Elena's gaze shifted, caught his. She didn't speak. She let a note drift to its landing like a leaf kissing water. There lay the answer at home, before an oven, before someone who promised then left. Marissa lightly grasped his sleeve, smile unchanged. "Adrian, we have a schedule. Don't let—" "Quiet," he said again, this time not as a whisper, not loud but firm, not a desire, a decision. An event coordinator reset to guide people on, but Adrian laid a nameplate gently between them. A small stamped aluminum card. But there in that pause it sounded like a seal that had been hot for years. "Continue," he said. The coordinator's throat locked. Those two words, normally a request, was now a verdict. Not for money, for the clarity it carried. Elena went on. She climbed to a rare high note where the willow's branch lifts slightly, just enough for light to slip through. In Adrian's mind, played a faded black and white photo, his young self beneath the tree arms around his mother. She half laughed, reproachful. "Don't squeeze too hard, the violin will—" Then laughed. "Never mind. Hold on." On the violin case rested two blowing away letters. She used a resin jar to weigh them down. The jar stained with green pen ink. A-A-C-E. "Wind willow," she whispered. "If one day you don't hear this anymore, you aren't you." He smiled. "I'll always listen." The words rolled down the porch planks like marbles, but which crack did they fall into? Now the ballroom took all that and fractured it into light. A single tear rolled from Adrian's eye, unannounced, not ruining anything. It fell onto his cuff, melting in place like crystal. He didn't wipe it away. He wasn't ashamed, only surprised. 30 years without crying hadn't blocked the channel. It was still open. "Mr. Cole," a PR whispered. "Fine," he said, still holding his gaze on Elena. "Leave it." Guests at nearby tables fidgeted, buttons on dresses, pressed flat ties, straightened. The emotion in the air was like a stray cat at a banquet. No one knew whether to shoo it or pet it. It circled ankles, sniffed softly, then leapt onto the glass table, landing right in the center of the lilies. Elena held the bow on a sustained note, that hard one between steps held by breath, unafraid to drop. And everyone held with her. The gavel paused mid-rap. The MC glanced at his screen. Nothing. He forced a smile. A photographer lowered his camera. "ISO insane," he muttered. The chandelier throbbed, tick, a hammer's echo. Then she released the string. Soft, like a whispered yes. Silence opened behind that note, not awkward, but like a new room unveiling. "That piece," Adrian said aloud for the first time. "Distinct, deliberate. What is it called?" He already knew the answer, but needed to hear it another way from another place. Elena looked down to the violin's finish, to the leaf-shaped scratch. She hesitated, then said, "The Promise." She paused, fingers grazing the D string beneath the willow. Adrian closed his eyes. A breath escaped, part laugh, part breathless. Not joy. Release. Marissa shifted her cool veneer, slipping for just a microsecond. She snapped a quick text. "Switch order. Move lot 7 to first." The MC's tone forked, but the center had already shifted. This melody stepped into the bridge where the storyteller lifts her hand and touches something deeper. Elena softened her color, less bright, more texture. She played sul tasto, letting it glide across the surface of sound. The music no longer sounded good in the high society sense. It became an old photograph with a broken corner, cross-hatched scratches, too much light, yet anyone looking could hear the wind. Adrian opened his eyes. He saw staff in black aprons running in the shadows, raising trays, lowering trays. Their hands looked like his mother's, ringless, unpainted. He saw Elena in the spotlight, cheap dress, fraying strap, but her spine was so straight it made everything else line up. He saw the $2 bills in her shirt pocket, the frayed edges catching light beneath fabric. And he recognized at last something this ballroom could never value: the worth of a promise unbargained. He stood slowly without fanfare. The chair whispered against the carpet. Head swiveled. The MC viral pause collided with him. "Sir." He didn't face the MC. He placed a palm still damp on the table. "Hold the sale for 5 minutes," he said to the coordinator flat out. "I must fulfill an old promise." "Adrian, we are," Marissa began. "Marissa," he turned to her, his gaze devoid of softness, absent fury. "I owe my mother a moment rising at the right time." She smiled, a glaze of silk. "We are in the... This is exactly the time to shift." He said it plainly. People at the table froze as if caught copying. He walked to stand 2 strides away from Elena, not intruding, not interrupting. He simply stood within the echoing of her music, allowing the notes to brush his shoulder like dust, where he asked softly, as one might wake a sleeping child. Where beneath the willow, Elena looked at him, her irises deep black with a thin spark hair's width wide. "Not a real tree," she said after a slow beat. The shadow of a tree on a wall from an old curtain. She offered a faint smile, mirthless, but enough to believe. He nodded slowly. "Mine was real." He gazed upward through the chandelier's crystal branches like willows, and I left it, waiting there too long. The final phrase of her piece arrived, not brash, not grand, just a hand resting on a shoulder that said, "Shall we go?" Elena lowered her bow. The resonance lingered on the glass ceiling for a heartbeat before dissolving. There was no applause, not because people withheld, but because they didn't know how to respond to that kind of silence. Adrian drew in a breath, like surfacing from water, then met her gaze. In his eyes glowed a new light, not a chandelier, the gleam of something reclaimed from dust. "Thank you," he said clear. One word weighty. It dropped onto the floor and didn't bounce. Marissa straightened, warmed again, mustering, "Ladies and gentlemen, next up." Her voice fell over the scene like a curtain, but the panel the curtain landed on had changed. At the room's far corner, a photographer clicked the shutter. Frame a girl in a tattered gown cradling a violin. a suited man standing nearby chandelier willows overhead. Between them, a white bow hair arced in the light like a handwritten note frozen mid-stroke. Focus pulls to Adrian's hand resting on a worn leather notebook cover embossed under the willow. His fingertip opens to the center pencil smudge of old notes. His fingertip darkened with graphite. He looked up. The camera lens snapped focus from the smudge on his hand to Elena's eyes, holding a trembling crystal leaf of light, like a door newly opened. The sky shrunk into a delicate string. Elena drew her bow upward. The tremor thickened, then erupted. Not like a storm, but a torrent of rain on a corrugated tin roof, drip, 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 then a waterfall. Sound shattered into glass fragments, falling onto velvet carpet, into crystal glasses, into the human heart. She shifted to sul ponticello bow, skimming the bridge. Metallic tones flickered like knives, then retreated to sul tasto, muted and hoarse like a woman who cried until her tears were spent, but eyes stayed full. Her vibrato was minimal taut as string binding a secret. A stray horsehair sparkled in the air, tracing an underline beneath promise. The gala froze. No clinks of cutlery, no laughter. Only the violin's cry and accusation amid satin and sequins. In front, platinum-cased wrists froze mid-gesture. A wine glass tilted. The rim just touched lips, daring not to spill. A guest tried to cough to dismiss his unease, but his throat snapped shut like a narrow gate. Elena guided the melody into a steep incline. Notes cascaded like moss-slick stone steps, slippery, dangerous, yet her body remembered each footfall. Sound panted tremolo, pulsing like a heart trapped in an ECG. Then, silence, half a beat of absolute stillness. That pause illuminated the entire ballroom. Chandeliers hung like crystal canopies. On tables, white lilies turned bone cold. Someone whispered, afraid they'd wake the fragile spell. "Oh my God." Elena flipped the bow back to a full-throated burn, not explosive, but crackling like old paper catching fire. Smoke's scent wove into high-end perfume. She pressed a low note heavy as a name submerged, then a high note bright slicing through glass. Two notes locked eyes like two truths refusing to lie still. "That's enough," came a cool voice from the head table. Marissa's, her porcelain smile in place. Chin lifted just so her gaze flicked over Elena as if she were tacky decor. "This is not a jazz club." The violin answered not in words, but with a shattered chord wide as a door blown open on a windy night. Elena's left hand trembled on a note, fracturing it into glowing shards buried beneath. A dress rustled. Chairs slid. Guests exchanged looks, then turned toward the stage. Elena didn't look back. Her eyes were fixed on the violin's leaf-shaped scratch. That scratch was her compass. In the second row, Adrian Cole stood not showy, but because he couldn't sit. He breathed as though squeezed through a narrow door. The faint, dried tear stain on his cuff remained. He walked to the edge of the stage where Elena stood in her solitary spotlight. Mr. Cole, the host, stammered, lowering the gavel. The PR rose, fingers on phones. Cameras clicked. Nobody wanted to miss a shark standing among many fish. Adrian didn't look their way. He stared at Elena, then spun to face the whole room. His voice wasn't loud, but it struck the glass walls, bounced back, became a command. Who allowed this girl to be humiliated here? The room staggered. Marissa flinched, humiliated, touching her like acid. She smiled, knife kept hidden. "Adrian, you're overreacting. She's unauthorized. I just need order." "Who?" Adrian interrupted, eyes locking on her. "Who put a protector on her shoulder? Who tossed money at her feet? Who called her violin ragged?" He swept his gaze across the tables. Who? No answer, just lowered eyes. Social smiles wilted. Marissa switched tactics host mode. Security remove. "Do not touch the performer," Adrian said to the guards without turning. "Cool as water." Those words don't touch, cut the air sharp and clean. A tech manager hovered ear-hooked, clutching a control panel. He glanced up at the front rows for cues. Adrian slid his Cole nameplate onto the table. The tap was final. "Mr. Cole," Marissa said, hands folded pleadingly. "This is private." Our staff." "Private or public," Adrian said, "decency is the same." Elena lowered her bow, not letting go of the violin. She stood like a milestone, with rain and fire still in her hair. left hand at the A string ready. Her heart slapped against the wood. The violin buzzed back a tiny hum only she could hear. Adrian turned toward the massive LED screen cue file A17. The technician hesitated. PR lunged to stop it, gaze stopped by Adrian's cold glance. Priority A. Adrian said, not looking at PR. His glare said enough. The tech nodded, fingers flying. The ballroom dimmed. Then a new display, not the sponsor logo. A spreadsheet, lines of numbers. Text. Marissa Foundation, Form 990 replica, with transfer records. Date time, recipient MV Advisory LLC. Note consulting, scholarship strategy. A collective gulp echoed not from the auctioneer, but from the real unfolding. PR scrambled. Cameras snapped in bursts. Interesting. Adrian began formal as financial report, but with edge. MV Advisory LLC has a single employee. Beneficiary. MV. Same address as your penthouse on 58th. Marissa's smile cracked like serum heated too far. You misunderstand. Strategic consulting is my vocation. The slide switched to an email header. Nearly blank cut list. Scholarship Q4 with Elena V, crossed out no optics value. Silence stretched less from confusion than from clarity. Elena locked eyes with her name, a verdict made real. You hacked my documents, Marissa spat. Your old consultant sent them? Adrian said, nodding toward the doorway. A woman entered, dark-haired, glasses, a witness with a thick envelope. Anya, Marissa scolded, your NDA binds you. Anya dropped the envelope, producing a USB and printed bank statements. NDA doesn't cover criminal conduct, she said flatly. These funds go through Cayman Shell to a ghost company. I've submitted to the authorities. This is the press copy. Cameras buzzed like startled insects. Marissa raised a hand to shield her face but pulled back. She couldn't be seen, faltering. She straightened. This is slander. Using a part-time student as your pawn is... Elena didn't stop her bow. She placed her palm on the string's shard-light plucking voice. No flourish. It silenced slideshow slander pawn. Marissa. Adrian said violin echo beneath. Remember your advertising slogan, invest in the future. One of your cut candidates is right here tonight. You called her a disruption. Tomorrow, how will you label the press? Marissa didn't retreat. Those are my standards. I'm not responsible for everyone's financial struggles, except Adrian whispered when your standards justify a $2 million consulting transfer. He changed slide a transfer record 2M to MV Advisory exactly on scholarship cutoff date. A collective stunned, oh, not auction applause, but jaws dropping. The room heard the crack in their floor. Marissa gagged, then faked a smile. I was investing in mentoring. Do you know what that means? Or only the word contract? A microphone picked up Adrian's voice on a voiceover CFO's tone. Mentoring was just memo wording. Actually, then Marissa's voice clipped. I need numbers. Change the title. No bonus anywhere. A cold resonance like everyone saw the mask fall. That's enough, she snapped, first sound of real volume from her. I'll see you in court. Please do Adrian's tone now smooth. I'm tired of signing checks that plaster over stains. He turned to the media, who edged closer. If you want real news here. He met dozens of eyes. As of now, Cole Group cancels all sponsorship contracts, MOUs with Marissa Ventures. Any approved funds halted. Pending projects terminated. I advise other funds. He glanced at wavering CEOs to audit their philanthropy if you don't want to wake up here tomorrow. A silent blast, not fireworks, but collapse of alliances. Cameras flared. PRs rushed to phones. Hosts stiffened, blinking. Marissa froze, lips painted red, splitting like a cut. She reached to yank the host mic cable, tangled mic clattered to the floor, bounded like a shot landing under the stage, Elena's stage. Elena bent, picked it up, set it right. No words, no gaze. A small, crisp motion of dusting. In an instant, institutional power stuck to granite transformed into useless plastic. Chandeliers flickered willow leaves in gentle wind. A wine cooler clicked light turned from red to green. Time resumed. The lights in the hall softened as though someone had dimmed their glare to make room for a different kind of brilliance, one that needed no illumination. Whispers, camera shutters, and the stifled coughs that had threatened to explode after the confrontation began to swell. but Adrian Cole raised a hand. A small gesture with a silencing power. Immediately, the room fell into reverent hush. He turned toward Elena. The man renowned for cold contracts, icy numbers, and unwavering composure bowed his head just a fraction. A gesture no one had ever imagined. "Your music," he said in a husky, low voice. No microphone necessary to carry it under soaring ceilings reminded me that there are melodies that never die. The entire room caught its breath. Elena stood there, shoulders trembling from fatigue, fingers still etched with the string's imprint. Her patched dress looked like tissue paper amid waves of velvet and silk. Yet in his eyes it wasn't ragged. It stood for something bigger. A proof that dreams can be buried, but the song born in your heart cannot be silenced. Adrian inhaled, gazing across guests, the press, those accustomed to bowing only to money's authority. "I declare starting today the Cole Foundation will establish a new scholarship, one in memory of my late mother, Evelyn Cole." He paused, his voice thick but firm. "And the first recipient will be Elena V." A ripple of astonishment spread, shock not noise. Cameras shuddered like falling stars. A few rose, uncertain whether to applaud or simply stand stunned by the emotion unfolding. Elena stood rooted, her ears rung. Words still resonated in her chest, the first recipient. Elena V. She shook her head, lips quivering as though to say, "This can't be real." Adrian glanced at her eyes glimmering in the light. "It can be," he replied as if hearing her thought. "It must be. This music cannot stay hidden in shadowed attics. It deserves to fly." A wave passed through the audience, not mockery, not derision, but genuine awe. Applause started, hesitant, sparking, then bursting into powerful ovation. No one orchestrated it. It was the one thing money could not buy: authenticity. Elena hugged the violin to her chest, still that battered instrument paint peeling patched string. Yet as light struck it, it glowed like a gem. No diamond here matched its luster. The radiance came not from resin or metal, but from her heart, from every note she poured out. Tears glided down her cheeks, but not of shame, of release, of hope. A door swung open. Adrian stepped forward one pace, giving her a small nod, recognition of a true artist. The press captured it, the billionaire bowing to the girl in the tattered dress with the old violin. A young reporter wiped her eyes, snapping photos. A symphony musician in a corner whispered softly, "She's the only artist I've seen tonight." Elena lifted her instrument again, no more tremor, no more fear. She played a short phrase, just 4 notes. Yet those 4 notes hovered like the only star in a gray sky. They melded with the applause, with her own heart's racing pulse. The screen behind lit up again, not with logos, but with that willow tree by the lake, its branches dipping into still water. Wind rippled the reflection. The willow's shadow shimmered as if whispering the promise never dies. The final frame slowly fades from the glowing light on the violin to a soft, enveloping darkness. The applause grows distant, dissolving into scattered heartbeats, like the collective breath of the audience quietly finding its rhythm again. Then a warm, steady voice begins. Not dramatic, not rushed. Just a whisper that slips straight into the soul. Have you ever watched true talent get buried, just because it was born into poverty? Have you ever seen hands tremble, not from lack of skill, but from being told by the world they don't belong? The screen shifts to a close-up of Elena's hands. Thin, calloused fingers, worn from work, still resting gently on the strings. There's no music now, only silence. But in that silence, you can hear something, the echo of a note coming from deep inside your own heart. What do you think is stronger? The narrator pauses, letting you answer quietly to yourself. Money power, or a melody played honestly from the heart. On screen, a visual contrast. On one side, dazzling diamonds scattered across a banquet table. On the other, a soft amber glow reflecting off the worn wood of an old violin. The diamonds glitter cold, sharp, empty. The violin light, it's warm, unsteady, and it looks you right in the eye. The voice continues. If you believe that music and kindness can still change the world, share this. Share this video so more people can hear her music. Cut to a wide shot of the concert hall. The once empty chairs are now filled hundreds of faces, all silent, all watching. As if every viewer is now a witness too, as if you were there. And what about you? The voice drops intimate like a secret. What if it were you? What if you were the one called a beggar at the doorstep of your dream? Would you still have the courage to raise your violin and play a beat, a lump in the throat? Then leave a comment. We want to hear your voice, because every comment is a note in our shared symphony, one of truth and compassion. The music returns, not the raw, aching violin from before, but something new, a warm, pure melody, like morning light after a long, stormy night. Then the voice one last time, steady, strong, and full of hope. And if you don't want to miss stories like this, stories that remind us that even in injustice we can choose courage, hit subscribe. Stay with us. The journey continues. The screen fades to black. Only the old violin remains resting quietly on a chair. A soft spotlight shines down, casting a small golden halo. It glows gently, a symbol of every dream once forgotten, but never truly gone. A single note begins, drawn long, slow, steady. It hovers in the silence, then fades, leaving only one question echoing in the hearts of the audience. What's stronger, power or a melody from the heart?